The freighter Halcyon Ridge drifted in the cold black of space, its engines silent, except for the faint hum of auxiliary systems. Laurent Vane sat hunched over the control console, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. The readings didn't make sense. Fuel reserves were dropping at a rate far too fast for the systems in operation. He had checked every line, every junction, every seal, and still the numbers bled red. Space didn't forgive leaks. Out here, fuel wasn't just energy. It was survival. He pulled up the diagnostics again, frustrated, tapping the screen as though brute force might change the truth staring back at him. The ship was losing fuel. Not enough to strand him immediately, but enough to set him on a slow spiral into helplessness. It was the kind of problem that haunted a spacer's nightmares, because once the tanks went dry, there would be no rescue. Only silence. Laurent ran a hand through his unkempt hair and cursed under his breath. He had patched up scavenger wrecks, stripped derelicts bare, even jury-rigged engines from half-melted parts. But this was different. Invisible, insidious. He grabbed a flashlight and headed into the narrow service corridors, determined to trace every line himself. The ship creaked faintly as though mocking his effort, steel ribs flexing under the void. Hours passed as he crawled through ducts, scraped knuckles against jagged panels, and scanned every meter of pipe. No leaks, no pools of coolant or frozen residue. Nothing but clean steel and cold emptiness. His frustration grew into a knot in his chest, tightening with each fruitless inspection. "Damn it, where are you bleeding from?" he muttered to the ship as though it might answer. By the fourth round of inspection, exhaustion gnawed at him. He returned to the engine bay, sat heavily on a crate and pulled off his gloves. His breath fogged faintly in the chill. He glanced at the gauges again. More fuel gone. His stomach twisted. At this rate, he wouldn't last 2 more weeks. Survival plans cycled through his head, rationing power, cutting non-essential systems, hailing distant relays. None of them were good enough. It was in that moment of despair that he heard it. A faint wet sound echoing from deeper in the bay. Not mechanical, not metallic. Something organic. He froze, head snapping toward the noise. Slowly, carefully, he rose, his boots crunching against scattered tools. The sound grew clearer, rhythmic gulps like someone drinking. His heart began to pound, pulse rushing in his ears. The beam of his flashlight cut through the shadows, sweeping across pipes and shadows until it landed on a figure crouched near the reactor housing. For a moment his mind refused to process what he was seeing. A woman, or something shaped like one, her skin a brilliant emerald green that gleamed in the artificial light. Silver hair spilled down her back as she tipped a translucent container to her lips, drinking deeply. Laurent's mouth went dry as the light revealed more. The container wasn't a bottle. It was a siphon hose connected to one of the auxiliary fuel lines. Liquid neon trickled down her chin as she swallowed, glowing faintly against her skin. She turned her head slightly, eyes flashing with unnatural brightness, and in that instant he realized the impossible. Someone or something was drinking his ship's fuel. His flashlight trembled in his grip. Instinct screamed at him to run, to seal the bay and purge the intruder into space. But his legs refused to move. Instead, he managed a hoarse whisper. "What? The hell are you?" The figure lowered the hose, green lips curling into something between a smile and a challenge. For the first time since the leak began, Laurent wasn't just afraid of running out of fuel. He was afraid of what had already found him. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged, broken only by the faint hiss of siphoned fluid dripping from the hose. Her voice, when it came, was soft, but carried a strange resonance like 2 tones blending. "You shouldn't have found me yet." Laurent's grip on the flashlight tightened. Every instinct in him screamed danger, yet there was something else too, a spark of raw curiosity he couldn't snuff out. He took a step forward, the metal floor ringing faintly under his boots. She rose slowly, unhurried, her movements fluid, almost graceful. In the harsh light, he could see her more clearly now. The sleek orange suit she wore clung to her, as though designed for another world, its seams glowing faintly with residual energy. She was alien in every sense, yet unnervingly human in form. Laurent's throat worked as he forced words past the lump of fear there. "That's ship fuel you're drinking. You're draining me dry." Her silver eyes fixed on him unblinking as she tilted her head. "To you, perhaps it is fuel. To me, it is life. I take only what I need." He barked a bitter laugh, disbelief crackling in his tone. Only what you need. You're killing my ship! Her expression shifted, a flicker of something like guilt crossing her face before it vanished. I did not intend harm, she said carefully. Your kind does not usually come this far out. I thought this vessel abandoned. Loran clenched his fists, adrenaline battling reason. Well, it's not abandoned. It's mine. And you're stealing from me. The alien's gaze didn't waver, though her lips pressed into a thin line. Then perhaps we must negotiate. The word felt strange in her mouth, as though she had learned it from somewhere but never used it herself. Loran shook his head slowly, disbelief and anger knotting in his gut. He had been searching for mechanical failure, but what he'd found instead was something far stranger and far more dangerous. For a long moment, neither moved. Loran's pulse thundered as he stared at her, and she stared back with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through him. Finally he muttered, "You're going to explain everything right now." The alien tilted her head again, considering, then slowly set the siphon aside. The faint glow around her seemed to dim, as though she were conceding to the demand. "You want answers, human?" she said softly, her voice carrying an edge of challenge. "Then you must be prepared to listen." Loran swallowed hard, his instincts at war with his reason. The fuel leak was no leak at all. It was theft or survival. And if he wanted any chance of saving his ship, he'd have to figure out which one it really was. As he stood in the dim engine bay, facing the impossible, one thought echoed in his mind. Space was dangerous enough without monsters, and yet somehow he wasn't sure if the green-skinned stranger before him was a monster, or the only reason he might survive what was coming. Loran didn't sleep that night. He sat in the engine bay, his back against a bulkhead. The alien woman perched across from him like a predator lounging in her territory. The siphon lay between them, coiled like a venomous snake, glistening with the faint residue of stolen fuel. His mind raced with questions, but the weight of exhaustion kept him pinned, words trickling out only when he couldn't contain them anymore. "What's your name?" he asked. The alien tilted her head as if the concept itself was foreign. After a pause, she answered, "Solari." The name rolled from her tongue with a lilt he couldn't place, carrying an echo as though it had been spoken through water. Loran muttered it under his breath, as though grounding it in his own reality. Solari. It sounded too human to belong to someone like her. He rubbed at his temples, frustration bubbling. Why my ship? Why not one of the derelicts floating out here? Why me? Solari's eyes glowed faintly as she regarded him. "Because you are alive," she said simply. "A living vessel sings differently than a dead one. Your fuel is still warm, still breathing." The cryptic response left him staring, dumbfounded. Every instinct told him not to trust her, yet the way she spoke carried no malice, only an otherness that unsettled him. He tried again. "You said you only take what you need. How much is that? How long before I'm stranded in the void because of you?" Her lips twitched, the barest suggestion of a smile. "Not long. Unless you choose otherwise." That answer made his stomach twist. Choose otherwise? What the hell does that mean? Solari leaned forward slightly, silver hair cascading over one shoulder. "I do not wish to drain you, Loran Vane. I wish to share." He barked a sharp, humorless laugh. "Share? That's my lifeblood you're guzzling, not a meal to split over a table." Her gaze didn't falter. "You misunderstand. I cannot survive without energy such as this, but neither can you. If we bind survival together, both of us endure. Alone, both of us may die." The words sent a chill racing down his spine. She wasn't threatening him outright, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Silence stretched between them again, filled with the muted hum of the ship's auxiliary systems. Loran's thoughts spiraled. Trusting her felt suicidal, but fighting her seemed impossible. She had infiltrated his ship, siphoned his fuel, and sat there calmly as though she owned the place. Yet she wasn't attacking. She was waiting. Finally, he broke the silence. "Prove it. Prove you're not just some parasite feeding on me until I'm dead." Solari's silver eyes narrowed slightly, the glow within them flickering like a storm contained. Without a word, she raised one slender hand and pressed her palm against the fuel conduit behind her. A shimmer passed through her body, faint green veins lighting under her skin, as if the energy itself flowed within her. The ship's systems, which had been dimming under rationing, flickered brighter for a moment. Light steadied, consoles hummed stronger, warmth bled back into the metal walls. Loran stared, disbelief choking him. She was feeding energy back into the ship. Not draining, returning, his breath caught. "First you can control it." Solari nodded once. "Yes, but it costs me. Balance is delicate. Too much and I wither. Too little and your vessel dies. Together we must find harmony." The words were spoken with an almost ritualistic weight, as though she were reciting lore older than his species. He dragged a hand down his face, torn between awe and suspicion. If she truly could balance their needs, then maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a death sentence. But trusting her meant gambling his life on an alien whose first act was stealing from him. It was madness, and yet staring at her he realized the truth. He didn't have another choice. "Fine," he muttered at last. "We try it your way. But if you drain me dry, I swear I'll find a way to take you with me." Solari inclined her head, not offended, not even surprised. A fair bond. The uneasy truce was sealed in silence, neither of them daring to break it. Loran forced himself to stand, stretching aching muscles, and gestured toward the control deck. "If we're doing this, I need to know everything. Where you came from, why you're here, and what else you're not telling me." Solari rose smoothly, her movements carrying the same alien grace that unsettled him. "Then listen," she said softly, "and you will learn why the void is not empty, and why your kind must never believe it is." Her words sent a shiver down his spine, and as they walked together through the dim corridors of the Halcyon Ridge, Loran realized he was no longer just trying to save his ship. He was stepping into a story much larger and far more dangerous than his own. Solari's story unfolded slowly, as though each word she spoke was measured against a weight he could not see. They sat opposite each other in the dim glow of the command deck, Loran leaning forward, arms braced against his knees, while she stared out the viewport as if searching for something beyond the stars. "My people do not build ships as yours do," she began. "We travel along the veins of energy that thread the void. To us the cosmos is a river. To you it is an ocean to cross. That is why you mistake me for a thief." Loran frowned, trying to reconcile her words with the logic of engineering. "Fuel lines aren't rivers. They're tanks, conduits, chambers. You tapped mine like a parasite." Solari turned her head toward him, silver hair shimmering faintly in the console light. "You are not wrong. Yet I am not wrong either. What sustains you sustains me. Though for me it is nourishment, and for you, propulsion." The calm certainty in her tone unsettled him more than anger ever could. He rubbed at his jaw, irritation and fascination colliding inside him. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact you're draining me. If you take too much, I'm dead in the water." Her gaze softened, a faint trace of sorrow flickering in her features. "That is why I came to you openly. I could have hidden longer. I could have left you to drift. Instead, I chose to speak." The words lodged like a thorn in his mind. She wasn't wrong. If she'd wanted him gone, she could have bled the ship dry without ever revealing herself. That choice alone suggested something more than survival. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. "So what do you want, then? A partnership? An alliance? Or are you just trying to keep me calm while you drink me to death?" Solari didn't flinch at the accusation. Instead, she placed one hand flat on the console. Her fingers splayed delicately against the controls. A faint glow pulsed beneath her skin, and the ship's lights brightened again, subtle but unmistakable. "Partnership," she said softly. "You live, I live. You move, I move. Your journey becomes ours." Loran's gut twisted at the implication. He had always been alone out here, salvager, scavenger, survivor. Now this alien proposed tethering herself to him, not as a stowaway, but as something closer to a co-pilot. The thought was as alien as she was, and yet something in him hesitated to reject it outright. "And if I say no?" he asked. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something unreadable. "Then you die sooner. Alone, I do not threaten this. I state it as truth." The words landed like cold iron in his chest. He hated that she might be right. Already the thought of venturing further into the void without her made his skin crawl, as though he'd be cutting away the only lifeline he had left. Silence hung between them again, filled with the faint hum of systems that no longer seemed entirely his own. He found his gaze lingering on her more than he wanted. Her stillness, the strange radiance of her skin, the way her eyes never blinked quite often enough. She wasn't human, Yet she wasn't entirely alien in her posture, in her cadence. It made him uneasy. It made him curious. He rose suddenly, pacing the length of the deck, energy thrumming through his veins. Fine, say I believe you. Say I let you share with me. How long until you bleed me out anyway? A month? A year? I've seen what dependency does. Parasites always kill the host sooner or later. Solari's voice followed him, low and steady. Not if the host learns to accept balance. Not if the host learns to give as well as take. He stopped at that, turning sharply. You keep saying balance like it's some sacred law. What does that mean? Explain it to me like I'm not some starry-eyed fool ready to sign my life away. She held his gaze without flinching. It means you must learn to listen to the energy you command. Not just burn it, not just drain it. Feel it, adjust to it. Let it flow through you as I do. Only then can we last together. His laugh was short, sharp, and bitter. I'm an engineer, not a mystic. I don't feel fuel. I burn it. But even as he said it, something inside him wavered. The demonstration she had given, feeding energy back into the ship, still burned in his memory. Maybe she wasn't speaking in riddles. Maybe she was describing something his people had never learned. Solari tilted her head, as if sensing his doubt. Then you must decide if you wish to learn. If not, we are both doomed. Her words echoed in the chamber, final and undeniable. He found himself staring at her again, torn between the instinct to cast her out the nearest airlock and the quiet, gnawing belief that she was offering him a chance at something far greater than survival. Exhaustion pressed at him, dragging at his thoughts. He dropped into the pilot's chair with a groan, scrubbing at his eyes. This is insane, all of it. I should space you and be done with it? Her voice was soft, almost kind. Perhaps. But you will not. He glared at her, but found no fear in her eyes, only certainty. The infuriating part was that she was right. He wouldn't. As the silence deepened, Loran realized something dangerous. He was beginning to want to believe her. That was the real threat. The possibility that she wasn't lying, that she could truly help him, that she might be more than the danger she appeared to be. That possibility, more than fear, tied his fate to hers in ways he hadn't expected. And in that realization, a new dread unfurled in his chest. If Solari spoke the truth, then whatever she was, whatever her people were, had just opened a door in the universe that humanity had never known existed. And once that door was open, nothing would ever be the same again. And in that fragile acceptance, Loran felt the shape of his life tilt. He had spent years scavenging in the void, surviving on grit and luck, always one miscalculation away from drifting forever. Now Solari's presence forced him to reckon with the possibility that survival was not the ceiling, but the floor. That something more might exist beyond his narrow horizon. The thought was terrifying, intoxicating. The days that followed blurred into a tense, uneasy rhythm. Loran worked the ship as he always had, patching systems, charting routes, scanning derelicts for salvage, but Solari was always there, watching, listening, sometimes touching the controls in subtle ways that made the ship respond as though it were alive. Her presence unnerved him, but her interventions saved them more than once. He hated the debt building between them. One night, while drifting near the wreck of an abandoned freighter, Loran caught her tracing a glowing line along the bulkhead, as if mapping veins only she could see. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She looked over her shoulder, eyes catching the light. "Teaching your vessel to breathe again." He didn't know what unsettled him more, that she claimed it could breathe or that he almost believed her. Still, every interaction left him raw. When she walked the corridors, her footsteps were nearly silent, as though gravity bent differently around her. When she spoke, her words carried strange cadences that lingered long after she fell quiet. And always that gnawing truth. She fed from his fuel. Yet somehow the ship's reserves dipped slower than before, as though she rationed herself for his sake. The paradox weighed on him heavily. She was both parasite and savior, threat and ally. He found himself avoiding mirrors, afraid of the question growing louder in his mind. Who was really changing here? On the 12th day since their pact, alarms screamed through the hull. Loran snapped awake, rushing to the cockpit where Solari already stood, her hands splayed against the console. "Something's wrong with the reactor," he barked, but she shook her head, eyes glowing brighter than he'd ever seen. "Not wrong, interference, they are coming." "They?" he spat, strapping himself into the pilot's chair. "Who the hell is they?" Her answer chilled him. "My kin. They found us." The void outside bloomed with light, ships sliding from the darkness like predators surfacing from deep water. Sleek, elongated forms shimmered with energy that resonated with Solari's presence, as though she were an echo of them. Loran's stomach dropped. He wasn't just caught with a stowaway. He was caught in the middle of something far larger. "Why are they here?" he demanded. Solari's lips parted, her expression torn between longing and dread. "Because I left, because I chose you, and now they will not let me go without claim." The words struck him like a hammer. "Claim? You mean they will not kill you," she cut in, voice trembling for the first time. "But they will take what I am. And when they do, your ship will be ash." Loran cursed under his breath, hands flying across the controls as he tried to push the ship into evasive maneuvers. The enemy vessels moved with uncanny grace, herding him like wolves driving prey. "Tell me how to fight them!" he roared. Solari closed her eyes, light blazing beneath her skin. "You cannot fight as you are, but if you open yourself to balance as I asked, I can give you what you need." His pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed not to trust her, not to hand over more than she already had. But the flashing proximity alerts and the looming silhouettes outside left him no choice. "Do it," he spat. "Whatever it takes, just do it." She pressed her hands to his chest, and a surge of heat and electricity lanced through him. For one terrifying instant, Loran felt himself dissolve, his veins thrumming with the same current that powered the ship. His mind brushed against the pulse of the reactor, the whisper of the engines, the fragile rhythm of oxygen cycling through steel lungs. The ship wasn't just metal anymore. It was alive. The enemy ships closed in, but the vessel bucked under his grip like a wild creature, finally unchained. He didn't pilot it. He felt it, weaving through their blockade with a precision he'd never imagined possible. Weapons fire streaked past, but every shot missed, as if the universe itself bent in their favor. Solari's voice was in his head now, layered and resonant. "Balance, Loran, not burn, flow." He grit his teeth, leaning into the impossible sensation of flying not with hands and calculations, but with instinct. With her. For the first time he understood why she called it nourishment. They broke free of the encirclement, the enemy ships scattering in pursuit. Loran felt his pulse synchronize with the thrumming of the engines, every heartbeat propelling them forward into the abyss. He realized with a mix of terror and exhilaration that he wasn't piloting a ship anymore. He was part of it, and Solari was part of him. As the stars blurred into streaks of light, he knew one thing with certainty. The moment he let her in, his life stopped being his own. And yet, he couldn't summon regret. Not when survival had never tasted so much like power. But in the quiet echo of her thoughts brushing against his own, he caught a shadow, a warning that chilled him to the bone. This is only the beginning.